Yo, what is going on, guys? Renekton here today, bringing you an exclusive Season 14 item guide video. Well, I say guide, but let's just say basically a rundown of all the items that you're going to be seeing within Season 14. Now, I will preface this and just say quickly that a lot of things can change from now, currently within November up until, Season 14 in January. However, at the moment, I do want to just go over the main items and tell you guys, like, all the new things that are being changed, like, I'm actually so excited for this, right? Like, I think League of Legends has been in a very weird state ever since, like, the removal of all these normal items into, like, the whole mythic era of items. And I think it's really limited a lot of, like, gameplay and skill expression from the game. However, with the game now progressing back, or maybe I should say regressing in a bit, taking that away and adding all these new items and all stuff like that, I'm very excited to show you guys all that and show you something real quickly. Like, wait, just a second. Watch this. Look at this. You see this? You see this? You are goddamn right, guys. Tiamat now is back as a item active. I have missed this so badly. Like, I have to share this before we get into the video, right? Like, I don't know, just seeing Tiamat back is like a fever dream. Like, I cannot believe it, right? Like, I might be like having 180 ping and it's like currently 1:30 AM in the morning, but you know, maybe I'm not dreaming, maybe I'm awake. But yeah, so firstly, I do want to announce that yes, Tiamat is back, along with many other items. So, to quickly just kind of go over this, like, just to sum it down. Riot have removed all all mythic items currently. They have changed them into normal items, so you might see things like Stridebreaker, that is still in the game. Things like Gore Drinker, however, have been removed. But if I just go over some of the previous mythics that are turned into normal items, we have Eclipse, Stridebreaker, a Triforce still the same, of course, as per usual. We have a Hullbreaker still, and there's some like new items and stuff like that. Ravenous Hydra, yes, this is also inactive, and I'll get into that as well. Also, we have some other tabs as well, some crit items, more fighter items, assassin items. There's a lot to show. So this video, I do want to say that in this video, I'm going to go over this in two separate things. Within this video, I'm going to break down all the items and kind of give you a look at how these items are. I'm going to be comparing them to the older selves, and I'll also be showcasing what they also do within the game. And within the next video, I'm actually going to go and do a lot of different item builds, and I'm probably going to talk about them, why I think they're good. They are going to require a lot of practice, so it will be a very theory-based video. So I can't say that they're going to be 100% the best. I do think that, you know, we can kind of get a lot of ideas. You guys can give me some ideas too. And maybe you guys can test it too on the PBE servers, even if people are just like bots, you know. It's still good to have that practice and understanding to what could be good within the next season. With all that said, let's get into the main video. So let's start with the components. Now, I'm not going to run down every other item component like I did in the past, but I do just want to share like some little changes and like little new things. So currently there's this new component, if you want to call it that, which is really pathetic, called Glowing Mote or Moti. This is probably one of the worst items I've seen, but still, it's pretty interesting. And it's actually going to be building into some of our core things now, and I'll get into that very shortly. As for like other basic components, a lot of things are still the same with different build paths. A new item that I do want to introduce, or should I say old item, is the Brutalizer. If you Renekton mains don't know about the Brutalizer was basically Renekton's core item back when it was an item from before Season 6, I believe. Damn, it's been such a long time, I forgot myself when this was kind of around. But basically in the past, this gave flat armor pen, it gave ability haste, or cooldown reduction back then, and also attack damage. And it also had the same price too, which is 1,337, also known as Leet, you know. Yeah, so already, we have some pretty nice components come back and really good snowballing options. Another one, obviously, is Tiamat. That is also a item kind of returned back to the state that it used to be in. We now also have this one called Steel Sigil. And to me, it's like the armor AD equivalent of like Seeker's Arm Guard, which is pretty good in my opinion, because I don't believe there was really any good options before, or any actually, that gave armor and AD into a component. So it's pretty nice to have that, so it's not like clouding your build slots. So it's a pretty good change. And as we can see here, it builds into like a death stance and GA here, which I'll go into shortly too, about the items. But yeah, pretty interesting concept overall, and I think it's pretty good, potentially. Pretty decent just to have that, at certain points in the game. Especially if you want to build armor while having some AD still for lanes. Could be a very good alternative. However, I think it's more of a mid-game item that you just kind of sit on for the armor. And that's basically about it. In terms of that though, there's not else that's like really been changed. It's just kind of like same components. We do see that there's this new item called Tunneler, which seems to be the... Oh, I just realized Phage has Moonspeed now. I will just say too, as I'm making this video, I have not fully understood everything, so you're going to see a lot of fresh reactions from me. But if you guys don't remember, Phage used to give Moonspeed back in the day, so it's good to know that Phage is back now, back in its ultimate glory of high Moonspeed. I used to actually miss this item, given like this stat, but I'm happy to see that it's back in the game now, as well the way it was, instead of that god-awful current state it's in. But comparing Phage to this, it seems like they have Phage now as a component to all the Moonspeed-based items. So that's pretty nice, you know, it's very interesting, very different too. I really like that actually, because I don't like when Riot just made like one component to fit them all, or just have Ruby Crystal and Longsword and you go into an item. Like, I really hated that, to be honest. So I do like that they have more character in the items, like they have a Phage again, like they have a Tiamat. For the Tiamat items that I will be talking about too, which you guys will be excited for. I'm just going to point that out right now. And so I guess this is like the equivalent of like another one where you just get, you know, your main powerhouse items that give you like health and all stuff like that. But yeah, very interesting actually. So pretty decent component, I guess, like for the mid game, like, or, you know, if you want to get like an item revolving around that. But now that I've talked about, actually, I haven't even talked about it properly. I need to go into the next things. So I need to quickly look over everything to make sure I'm not missing everything. So there seems to be a new assassin item too, called Restrix, I guess. 4% movement speed and 20 AD. Pretty interesting component too. Which you're going to be building into a Ghostblade, Hullbreaker. Wait, Hullbreaker too. There's actually so much going on. I'm actually really shocked right now, but this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool too, I guess. In terms of other things too, something that I also found was interesting was that Riot still has kept Serrated Dirk in the game, while they've also had the Brutalizer as a other armor pen component, which is pretty cool, I'd say, because there's more variety in what you can build. However, it has got a really weird build path currently. Brutalizer builds from Pickaxe and Glowing Mote, which is pretty awful components considering that, you know, you can get the Serrated Dirk just for 1,000 gold, sit on that for 10 lethality, while Brutalizer's giving you a little bit less, but it adds ability haste, so I don't know. And I guess for the items that you get too, it's more of a purchase for them, so I don't know how to feel right now, but I think Serrated Dirk is still pretty good value when you're just spamming longswords. However, if you are ahead in lane and you greed out for the pickaxe buy, you can then obviously get into your Tiamat or your Brutalizer. Also, I just realized too, it doesn't even build out of Tiamat anymore. So longswords actually build the Tiamat too, so you can basically do like old snowballing strats such as, I don't know, you just spam longswords, get Tiamat, you can then get like a Dirk or something like that, which then builds into Ghostblade. You can also like get Black Cleaver. Like there's just so much variety you can have with this, and when you have runes like PTA and all stuff like this too, it just adds so much damage and so much potential to snowball the lane and be insane. So, you know, it's already looking pretty wicked start for like next season Renekton. Really strong start, and I'm really excited for that. In terms of other components, nothing else has really changed. I'm just looking at your tank stats too and all stuff like that. Some little things have been changed in the values, it seems, but other than that, everything looks pretty much the same. Nothing too different, so yeah. With all that being said, let's get into the main items now. So, where do we begin with the main items? A lot has been implemented and changed, and I think I'll go it class by class potentially, if that's not too difficult. So first of all, I'm probably going to touch into the fire items because I think it's probably easier to explain one by one. I'm going to go from fighter to maybe marksman, assassin, and then tank. Or maybe I'll go assassin next, but we'll see as I make this video. I'm going to do a lot of jump cuts too, so you know, be prepared for that as well. Firstly, the item that I do want to go over in this whole list of things is Ravenous Hydra. I did think about going one by one, but let's just start off with a bang here and talk about Ravenous Hydra. So as we can see, Ravenous Hydra is basically what it used to be back in the day. Back in the day, I believe it did have 70 AD, or at least 65 AD, and it had its active, it had lifesteal, ability haste, Like, it was a pretty good item. It wasn't the best as a starting item on Renekton. It made for a really good late game purchase when you'd want to complete your full AD build, or even get a second bruiser item just for a lot of attack damage and a lot of stat value. That's like when it was typically pretty good too. I really don't know how it's going to be in Season 14, but I'm very interested because my whole philosophy on items has certainly changed. So when it comes to the Ravenous Hydra buyers, potentially it could be good a second item. So you go Cleaver, Ravenous potentially, and then into like maybe a Sterak or some kind of armor item like Death Stance. We'll have to kind of see on that based on how things are, but currently that's how I maybe view it. But yeah, so just to show the item off too, like what it does, if it's the same. Right now I believe it's a bit bugged. It's a very slow animation currently. It's very clunky. I'm even spamming it if you can hear. And it's not really going off. I think towards the end of the pre-season patch, if you can even call it pre-season, let's just call it Season 14 patch. I'm sure it's going to be like a lot faster when it's active, so don't worry about that. But if you want to see like just basic combos, you can still do things like, you know, Ravenous Hydra Q by double casting. You can do Ravenous Hydra E. I hope they make it look better. They definitely need to make it look better. It's definitely very outdated effect. Also, every auto attack will have the Cleaver as well. Just like before as well. So it's kind of back to its own roots. Obviously, W Tiamat as well. Nice little combo, 180 ping. Damn, I missed you. I've missed you so much. Oh my god. I gotta keep myself together. Like, Jesus Christ. I'm kind of like fanboying too much over this, but how could I not? I'm a Renekton main, right? Like, I need to fanboy over this. Okay, the next thing too, I guess, is like WR. Okay, so WR, Ravenous Hydra auto. You can basically do the full AD combo again, like the substandard like full AD combo. And if you guys don't remember that, it's basically like auto WR, Tiamat auto, EQ AA. A bit harder on higher ping. I just kind of did it before this. The animation is kind of bugged currently, so it doesn't look smooth, but yeah, you can basically do that again, so that's pretty good. So the next item that I do want to talk about now is Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver has definitely had a little bit of a nerf when it comes to this season. However, I think it's completely fine, because in a way, the build path gets changed into a pretty decent one, maybe. I don't really know yet. Phage just seems pretty good, you know, for moon speed and some like decent stats. You know, you have a random longsword, Kindle Gem. It's all okay. Like, you would build this item when you want to like have health, you know, you want to get your AD as well. You want it as like a way of like being able to deal with bruisers, right? Like, if you want health against them and it's like some damage, like it's a pretty good moderate item into that. Very good for stats, well-roundedness, good for your AD junglers and teammates earlier on, especially like yourself as well. However, it's not the best snowballing item. Let's just say that right now. It's definitely not the best snowballing item. One thing that I do want to kind of go over too with this is that this is now a unique item in the way that you can't buy things like Serylda's Grudge anymore, or even any other like armor pen style items. So if I go to like these items, I can't really buy them at all, which is very interesting. And I think in a way, it's so Riot like can kind of tone down on the whole armor shred type of thing that's like within this game. To be honest, I'm kind of fine with that as long as things aren't overtuned, but in a way, they've heavily buffed AD items and also AP items, so I really don't know about that. We'll have to see. We'll have to see again, but I just thought it was a little bit of an interesting tidbit to share with you guys. But they've also nerfed the armor shred too. It was 30%, but here it's 24% now. How much does it stack for? For 6 seconds. So does it stack the same as before? Yeah, so it goes up to 6. So 6 hits will add the stacks of the Black Cleaver. Gonna see my W also procs it. I'm testing anything right now just in case there's like any bugs. W procs the Black Cleaver. Okay, seems all fine. Also I get moon speed as I'm hitting now, which is pretty cool. Pretty decent item. Another thing that you may have noticed too with Black Cleaver is that they've actually nerfed the ability haste. Before it was 30%, or let me say 30 ability haste, sorry, it's a very hard thing to kind of get over. CDR percentage and flat. Regardless, so before you was getting like, you know, a pretty good amount of cooldown reduction, it'd be 30, haste. It basically gave you like a big ton of CDR. But now they've dropped it to 15, so it definitely lowers on the fact that your ability casting can be a little bit slower. Or like take a little bit of time to come up. Also, I probably should turn this off for the sake of the video. But other than that, we'll have to see how it is. At least it's like kind of balances it for everyone else. And I think Riot's goal this season too, with the whole nerfing of ability haste, is to kind of get rid of the whole spell casting side of things. And they also want to bring back like more like damage and like more creative play and not like so much unfairity between champion classes. So it's very interesting philosophy, I guess they have, but again, we'll have to see how that is. But I just thought I'd share this too, like that. I think it's still very good for Renekton. I think as well it might be better than some of the other items I'm going to talk about shortly. But yeah, that is basically Black Cleaver. The next item I want to talk about here now is Sterak's Gage. Definitely going in a little bit of a weird order, but I'm just kind of going in from Renekton's like kind of best or most interesting items for the class first. So if you're kind of like wondering like how I'm going to go in this order. So Sterak's Gage pretty much looks the same. Renekton still has the same bonus 80, has the same 450 health. Nothing's really changed with this item. I would expect this to be more of a third item now. I don't think, again, nothing really changes with this. I guess you could build it second if you may be behind. In terms of the build path, we have the new component Tunneler, which seems like seems okay, bit of a weird item, but you know, it's something to get used to. It's a little bit decent. It's better than before potentially. But yeah, not much else to say on this. Sterak's Gage pretty much works the same way. You would want to build this when enemy has a lot of burst damage within the game. So if there's like lots of AP and AD champions that are fed within the mid game, definitely a really good buy to buy time for your team, and also able to kind of like, you know, be this tank that frontlines everything. So that's kind of like how I would see this when it comes to Sterak's Gage. Now the next item that I do want to talk about too that gladly makes a return is Stridebreaker. Stridebreaker currently within Season 13 is definitely one of my favorite items when it comes to Renekton builds. Eclipse and Stridebreaker are by far the most fun compared to, like, let's say a Gold Drinker and your other options, so I'm kind of glad that they added this back. But when it comes to the item, it's definitely a little bit different, so if we just buy it real quickly. They've nerfed a bit of the stats down a little bit at this time. It's like kind of like a mid-range, like bruiser item, good disruptor type of item purpose. So you would want to build this into your range matchups, potentially ones where like the enemy like wants to kite you. It's still a good option for that. Like, it kind of works the same way. So if we read real quickly, it does 30% slow on top of that with 3 seconds, which is pretty good. You also gain 30% bonus movement speed per champion hit. Ah, that wasn't there before. That's interesting. So what does that look like? 463. Wait a minute. This could look crazy. Wait, hold up. Okay, so we're getting into a team fight now. Whoa, this is interesting. Well, that's cool. That's pretty cool. I like that. So, some other things to talk about. 20 attack speed, 400 health. It's a pretty good mid-range item. And the fact it also gives you, like, a rage, like, passive too is pretty good. I wonder if it's the same as this. Like, will we get the same one? Seems like it's a little bit different here. So if I build this right now, let's see what happens. Yeah, so it actually increases it. That's really cool, actually. That there's, like, more variety in that way. Holy, I wonder how fast we can get here. This is really sweet, though. I really like this. I currently don't know how much damage this does, though. How much damage does this do? Doesn't seem like it does any damage anymore. Dealing physical damage grants you... Oh, yeah. It doesn't. Oh, okay. I was misled thinking it did damage when I was testing it before, but apparently it doesn't. So I guess with Stridebreaker, the whole purpose of this is, again, you just want to build it when, like, the enemy has a lot of champs that are, like, have a lot of mobility or perhaps lack it. So it's a good way to, like, keep on top of them, auto-attack them down, and it's pretty good for your team in, like, making picks. So the games where you, like, try to make picks against enemy team going through jungle or going through the new terrain, which is very crazy to talk about, and I'll talk about that within a playtest video, which I'll do very soon. But yeah, overall, pretty interesting. And a question you guys might have is, can you animation cancel with Stridebreaker, and can that also work with Ravenous Hydra? Well, guys, I do want to say that, yes, it does, in fact. And you get some really weird looking combos, but I think it's because it's like high ping right now, so I don't have the best luxury when it comes to being able to do these combos because I'm playing on the PBE servers. However, you can do some like pretty crazy stuff like this. Or if you want to do like a little flash combo. Not the most crazy thing. I think when live comes out, we're going to see some interesting things. But yeah, Basically, you can kind of cancel with this. So if you want a quick auto attack off with the Stridebreaker, you can do this. Definitely looks weird though, with like no damage on the active. But you can do this instead though. Alright. So you get like this mixture of animations there, which is very interesting, but yeah, overall it's pretty cool. And the range seems pretty decent too. So I can just be in this range and just cast it as well. That's really cool. I really enjoy that actually. So Stridebreaker seems like a pretty good item. Now to talk about my next favorite item that I really enjoyed within the last season, season 13, that would be Eclipse. I was a hard believer on first of Eclipse being a good item, but it definitely grew on me the more and more I played on the mythic era of items, and it certainly became one of my favorites as a damage item. Really good duelist and strong powerhouse of an item. Or Renekton, like within the lane and also the mid game. Now, with the changes to this item now, it's kind of been reworked drastically in a way. So as you can see, there's no more lethality on this item, which already kind of makes it a bit of a lesser choice for me. However, it gives 70 AD and 50 ability haste, and it still maintains the same passive too, which now apparently is 3 separate attacks or abilities instead of 2. I don't know how that's going to be, but as of right now, when I have the item, it seems just to work on 1, so I don't really know what that's really about. So, oh sorry, I mean 2 attacks. So basically that means I can W, pocket still, auto Q when it's up, just wait around here, auto E. So it kind of works the same way, so I'm not sure if this is a typo or what, but overall, I mean, works pretty much the same way. Now, when would I build an Eclipse? I think Eclipse is still a solid item, just because the whole passive of this. The passive is really strong for playing against bruisers, it's really good for mitigating against damage. It's a really good bully item, and I think within the next season, with Tower Gold giving more as of the next patch that as I'm recording this, which I think is the final patch of the year, on top of like all the fights that may happen for these new objectives that spawn here, I think it could be good for that still, and it could be a good first item. Maybe there's a way we could like do it in a bruiser build too, but more than anything, I think it's more or less a good item against tanks for a full AD playstyle. So we would maybe get this, Bork, Cleaver, all those type of items pretty much, and have this like dueling power or even against duelists. But like I said, in the next video, I'm going to theory craft a lot of these items and try and work with a build as well that you guys will probably get familiar with as you're trying to think of like when to build these items and stuff. With all that said though, Eclipse, pretty much the same thing, still works the same way. I do want to find a way where I can build this in my items, and I most certainly will. And quickly to go over the items too, I also just noticed that Caulfield has this in it now, glowing mutt, which is very weird. But on top of that, definitely a bit interesting. Has a pickaxe buy in it too now, which kind of nerfs the It kind of nerfs the build a bit, because there's a lot of like pickaxes like you have to buy for different items. So yeah, we'll have to see on that one, but I'm very interested to try it out, that's for sure. The next item that I want to talk about now is Titanic. I was looking at Shojin, but I'll get to that shortly. Titanic is back to its old glory as well. So with the current Titanic, you would get health based on the amount of... Oh, sorry. You'd get attack damage based on the amount of health that you would get. So things like Grasp of the Undying or Heartsteel gave a lot of bonus AD to this item, which would help a lot of champs like Scions scale into the game and become absolute menaces. The main difference now is that while it does scale off health still, which doesn't really give me the percentage here of like what scales off it, it is back to like how it used to be, where it has an active, which is the Crescent, and also has this Cleave. It also gives 550 health and also 55 AD, which is pretty normal, I think, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, we're back to this like animation, right? Same animation, maybe. I haven't really bought this item in a while. Now it has this too, which is basically how it used to be before, if you guys don't know. So typically before, with the old Titanic Hydra, you could put it in your W to do more damage on top of it. As you see here, like it applies onto it. So I have like 4 hits of damage there. But a way that you could kind of make better use of this is that you would auto W, then like use it at the end to quickly cancel the W a little bit. But I don't seem to really get it off fast here, but maybe it's because of the ping. But yeah, either way, it's still pretty good. When using this item too, you most likely want to ult. As you see, my AD becomes bigger and my damage too. So why try and ult as well before the active, so you get like the most value out of this. Another thing to know about this item too, like mechanically as well, it gives an auto reset. So most of the time you want to like do combos like this, try and make sure you use it for the extra hit of fury or just applying the damage. It's like another way of using it. And in terms of items as well, it looks like this. So it's a very interesting build path. A lot of things going on here. Will this be a good first item rush? I don't really know yet. But I think it would definitely be a better second item for a bruiser build. Either second to third item is like what it used to be before. So I kind of think Renekton's back to that whole idea of like the way you play it. So potentially, I think Cleaver into Titanic's are very good for bruiser builds. Maybe Stridebreaker within this build too could be interesting for some mobility and disruption. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on it right now as I'm making this part of the video. Moving on, we now have Spear of Shojin. Shojin once again has been reworked, and this is probably the most dreadful and crazy build path I've seen since like the spatula in what's that game called Nexus Blitz. Like, what the hell are we looking at here? There's so much going on here. Like, I don't even know what to fucking say about this. Like, we have glowing motties everywhere. We have Kindle Gem, Warhammer, Shojin. Already, I'm not a big fan of how it looks, but we'll see, obviously. We'll see, like, how it fares. But what does it give us? So it gives us 200 health, which is a nerf from its current health that it gives us. It gives us 20 ability haste, 55 AD. It's definitely been toned down a little bit. In terms of price, too, it is 3,100, so it's a little bit pricey. However, when we read the stats, like the main passives and stuff, your non-ultimate spells give 15 ability haste. I'm not sure if it's around the same as I'm making this right now, but another thing to also note is that it has this interesting thing now where spell hits grant stacks up to 3. All our spells will give us up to a 3% increased damage for each stack, meaning that basically gets us to 9% damage. I was playing a little bit of this before I like made this video, or like as I'm making this video, and I don't know if it's bugged or maybe it's me, but I don't know if I like it personally, because I don't think it works on the W. I need to test this again. So 232. Yeah, so it looks like our W does not get stacked by this. So if we Q, we can see the Q going up 297, 305 with PTA. PTA just dropped off. 232, 250. Yeah, so it looks like the W doesn't really do anything when it comes to Shojin. So if you guys are looking forward to W doing serious amounts of damage, it actually doesn't really do anything with that, unfortunately. Because I think it's because it counts as like an auto attack modifier, like an empowered attack. So it has basically no basis of being like a normal spell ability. So sadly, I don't think the value in this item is really there anymore for Renekton. Now, in terms of cooldowns, you know, it's basically kind of like the same, maybe. Nothing too different. A W is kind of cut down a little bit, but that's essentially it. Nothing really going on other than that, really. My ult does proc the Shojin passive, however, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it just seems like, for the most part, it's like my QE and ult ticks are kind of getting affected, but nothing really else. Is it even my ult getting affected? I want to check this again, just to make sure. Okay, so my ult gets increased. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I think for an item of Renekton, you want something that's definitely going to be, like, giving you a power spike everywhere. And if it's not going to work on W, I don't really see the point of really having this. It's probably better on champs like Riven. Maybe, like Riven. Maybe possibly a Zed. Maybe, I don't know, possibly not. So I'm with like low cooldowns, really. So I don't know. I think Renekton isn't really that. So that's kind of like my take on Shojin right now until I test it more. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this, because I think it's definitely not the best as we're currently testing this. Now, a new item that I want to showcase is something called Sundered Sky. So I believe this is kind of the replacement to Divine Sunderer. Thank fucking God it's finally removed, by the way. I hated fucking Sunderer Jax. It gives me nightmares still to this day, so I'm really happy that it's been removed. But essentially, this item, it gives us pretty decent AD stats. It gives health, 15 ability haste, and the whole passive of this is that the first attack will crit 150%, and it heals us for the basically around the same amount. So 154 health, and plus 8% of missing health. So it's pretty good for champs that like maybe like to duel. So Fiora, Trendemir, I'm mainly thinking of right now. But just to test it, that's just kind of how it looks. Nothing too over the top. I wouldn't really say it's a Renekton item. Seems to happen every like 6 seconds too, so definitely Fiora is going to be proccing that. No doubt. So yeah, not really a Renekton item, but I just thought I'd show it. Maybe you guys can make it work or come up with a build with that, but I don't think it's really for Renekton right now. Now the next item I want to speak about is Blair Ruin King. Alright, so guys, in the video that I was making here, I actually didn't notice a very impactful change they made to Blair Ruin King here. So instead, the item no longer has the passive damage, which is from the Siphon passive. So now, when you do your first hit as well, instead of 2 hits, you end up slowing them for an amount, and you actually don't do any damage anymore. Overall, this is quite a nerf to the item, I feel like. And I'm not sure why Riot was going with this. I guess they wanted to keep it like in one damage source, not like giving magic damage on the hit, which I guess is fine. But yeah, it is something that I do want to point out, regardless of this point of the video. But with that said, there's not really much else changed with Blair Ruin King, and it still works the same. So that is practically it with the item. In terms of other item changes, we have Serylda's Grudge. Serylda's Grudge has took a very heavy hit in the fact that you can't really build it with Black Cleaver anymore, which is quite a shame. However, you do get, you know, some decent stats out of this. If we look at the item now, we gain 24% armor pen, which is definitely still a bit of a nerf. We get 50 ability haste, 15 lethality, 45 AD, and we also have a slow as well. Like, it's a very interesting item, right? Because we get this flat lethality, like flat armor pen, and then we have percentage pen on top of that. It's given us a pretty hefty amount of like damage, like, and shred through armor. It's meant to feel good for assassins in a way to kind of deal with squishes on top of tanks and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think it's a very weird item. Like, it's just very weird of how it works in a way. And it seems like they've changed the passive too. Damaging abilities slow enemies under 50% health by 30% for 1 second. Huh. That's really interesting. So right now, it's only when the 30%. Can't really test if it's working here yet. I'm not really sure, but to me... Okay, there we go. Huh. Wait, does this scale off lethality? Oh wait, this scales off lethality too. Wait, so what's that gonna look like? So if you guys are curious what lethality this would scale off of, we are getting a total of 36% armor pen, which is pretty crazy, but we don't have space for some other items. So what does this look like now? It's interesting. But you only have a slow for 1 second now. I think it's definitely nerfed in a way. I don't know how I feel about this on Renekton yet, but it's definitely not the same, and I'm going to need a lot of testing with this, but it's a pretty cool gimmick that the more lethality you build, the more that you're also inherently countering people stacking armor and stuff like that as well, so it gives a pretty good sweet spot for assassins, which is pretty decent. And in terms of like lethality and full ID Renekton builds too, it has a way of bringing it back in that direction. But I'm not so sure I'm sold over this over Cleaver, but I guess one is for basically assassins and one's for like bruisers, so it's kind of like the ways you look at it, I suppose. If you want to kind of go like which over the other. But still, even if we buy it, we still have like more AD and like still decent amount of pen. But yeah, I guess it's kind of like a preference really on like how people prefer with it overall. Now we cover that, I do want to just quickly speed run over the rest of the things I haven't really touched on. So we have Champion Chainsword here, which kind of remains the same. We have More, which also is the same if you're curious. Triforce has a lot of stats shifted into it now. Like, it lost the percentage AD scaling, or sorry, the percentage AD buff you would get from attacking champions. It is now just a Spellblade passive, which it used to be before. So a pretty decent item if you want to, I don't know, maybe sell it for something, but I don't know if it's good for Renekton. I think it's really bad if we look at it in that way. Death Stand's pretty much the same as well. Also, I'll talk about this real quickly. It also builds out a Brutalizer as well, if you're curious, and Last Whisper. So, pretty heavy build path to kind of like go into, but nevertheless, it's still pretty good as well for assassins. Now we have GA as well. GA builds out of this new one, Steel Sigil, which is pretty interesting overall, and so is Death Stance. Hullbreaker 2 has also been changed, which kind of looks interesting in a way, but let's see what it actually says here too. So, let's just grind a stack for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So stack consumes all deal bonus physical damage, increase to hit structures. So it seems like they've kind of buffed this up a little bit in the fact that it does more damage to towers, but they removed the whole resistance type of stuff which I think is really good because champions that would get Hullbreaker became absolutely disgusting. So I think it's a very fair item now. Like, it gives pretty decent stats as it is. So you don't get all this like load of armor, magic resist, and just make you completely unkillable. I think it's pretty good overall. Pretty good change, pretty healthy, pretty good, well-rounded stats for split pushers too. And in terms of Renekton, I think he could use this pretty decently maybe as well, but we'll have to kind of evaluate that as I get more into this video. In terms of other things as well, everything's like relatively the same. Witsend, however, has 20% tenacity buff on this now. This is not a... I want to clarify, this is not an AD item, but it's definitely a scary item to play against when it comes to champs like Kayle, Irelia. The tenacity is pretty big, the magic resist, attack speed. Like, it's a very big deal, and it also gives 80 magic damage on hit too, which I think scales for the game. So all in all, pretty interesting change. Now, one thing that I forgot to also explain to you guys is these two items. So we have Terminus, which I don't think is really anything interesting for Renekton. Basically, you kind of switch between two different effects, which are on hit. So you get up to like 5 armor magic resist, which stacks up to 25 for 5 seconds. And you also get armor pen too, which stacks up to 30% as well. But I don't know if you can buy anything else. Yeah, you can't. So this is more of like an ADC defensive item, I suppose, which can be really annoying. But I don't know. It's very interesting. It says fighter, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. But we have this one too. So this is more of a... Not very sure. I think it's like a Trendemir item. So it gives AD attack speed, 300 health. Like, it's a really good item to help you play against like bruisers and stuff like that, I imagine. And then once you ult, you get like a bunch of stats. So if we just like let our home guard go a second and just use the item. Let's see what it looks like. That's pretty crazy, actually. What the hell? Yo, that's pretty crazy. And he also gives 30 ability haste too for the ultimate, which is very big. This seems more gimmicky than useful, but I could see this as like something maybe. Maybe if you got like a Blair Ruin King duelist style maybe of sorts, it could be good, or split pushing. Maybe Hullbreaker, this item, Bork, Eclipse, it could be interesting. We'll have to see too, we'll have to see. But yeah, this is certainly a very interesting item. Really good for Fury generation and just like DPSing. So yeah, that is Hexplate. Experimental Hexplate. Pretty experimental indeed, and very interesting. So guys, now we've covered the fighter items, it's now time to go into the Marksman class. There's not a lot of things really here, but I just thought I'd kind of touch on these real quickly because, you know, it's just worth explaining for a big video and how it affects Renekton. So firstly, you might notice that we have Phantom Dancer here. Phantom Dancer got shifted back into kind of how it used to be, but instead it looks like it gives a lot more than I remember. 30% attack speed, 20% critical strike chance. Can't speak right now as I'm making this. And 10% moon speed, and it also grants 7% of attack speed up to 5 stacks as well. That seems pretty crazy if you ask me. So to put it in perspective, like around moon speed, it's going to end up looking like this, right? So we could sell our boots last time and even go this for an item. So it's like a really good like last replacement for like Playstyles maybe. And the more we're in combat, the more attack speed we get as well. So very scary dueling item once again. Really good late game focused item sell for boots. And with boots, it kind of looks like this as well. So pretty fun, pretty cool, you know. Good alternative to swap out to. In terms of other things, I think everything's relatively the same. Collector got changed a little bit. Nothing too different. Kraken Slayer is still in the game. Functions the same way, nothing too different. Just going through all the items too, seeing if anything is different as well. Well, it doesn't seem like anything else is different, but you can buy both Infinity Edge and Navori Quick Blades, which seems very interesting, so I wonder how that's going to pair with one another. So your abilities do this based on crit chance. So your auto attacks and your abilities have crit on them. Now, I'm not a big fan of Crit Renekton. I think Crit Renekton sucks, but if we think about champs like Trendemir or Gangplank, this is going to be crazy for like ultimate spins and damage on hit. So I definitely think we're going to see like a lot of Trendemir based champs like return as well, with Phantom Dancer 2 on top of that, and maybe this new item as well. Very scary thought, but you know, maybe, you know, that's a little thing that comes back just as a indicator as well to the meta. But yeah, pretty interesting regardless. But there's not much else to really talk about here, so we'll move on to the next one, which is assassin items. There's a lot of goodies here that I want to unpack. So assassin players, full AD, my full AD Renekton players, I know you guys have been struggling. I've been struggling. I've been depressed. I've been wanting my one-shot builds back. I've been very bored of these duelist type of styles where I'm not one-shotting people. I've been very sad that like everyone's outranging me, that I just don't have that damage to finish people off or snowball heavily. You know, it's been a really tough time for full ID Renekton players, but this is where I bring you Season 14 assassin items. With that said though, let's begin with the Profane Hydra, the newest addition to the Hydra items. Profane Hydra here gives us 60 AD, 18 lethality, and 20 ability haste. Just like the other Hydra items too, it has a cleave passive too, which looks definitely a lot more different. Has a pretty cool, interesting icon as well. And it also has a very unique activation too. So I'm not sure if you guys actually know this, but I believe it was in Season 9. Riot wanted to add, or maybe it was even pre-season. I think it was actually pre-season 11 into the mythic items. Riot wanted to add a Tiamat item, which was actually an assassin one. And it was actually on the servers, but Riot had to remove it because it was so broken on champs like Rengar. And interestingly enough, they brought it back. I think I also played it on Renekton too, and it was pretty strong. So yeah, they've brought it back now, and it is a little bit different than I remember, I think, with the activation. So here, it actually works differently. So if we check the other Hydra, the other Hydra's damage is always 205, and it applies around you and also does lifesteal. This, however, scales up. It does a little bit less, but the lower people are, the more damage it also deals, below 5% health. So if we do view it, Ravenous Hydra is more consistent and also gives us more damage to use, but it doesn't have the lethality on top of that. And something that's also very interesting as well is that your cleaves will also proc on multiple targets too, which will make for some good AoE damage. And if we use the active too, the active looks something like this. It also doesn't like lose fall off too, so I could stand here and it'll still hit everyone as well. I think Hydra's damage used to fall off. I don't know if it's the same now. Let me test it real quickly. It's actually the same. That's actually a big buff too. Before, the damage used to be based on like how close you were to someone, so because it's all the same damage now, it's a pretty big deal. So as you can see here, the lower people get, the more damage your active does. But it's more of like an execute type of thing. And when it comes to combos, it's a bit awkward because you typically want to use Hydra earlier on in a combo, but it seems like you need to use it later on. When it comes to assassinating someone, it can be a little bit awkward because you don't want to use it too early within the combo. So typically we want to try and use it late. So I think when it comes to general one-shot combos, it might be something like this. Maybe something like this, or if you have like enough damage already, you could just space in between the R and the auto attack. So most combos are like AA, W, R, active, AA. So maybe there, if you're like trying to one-shot a squishy. And with all the lethality you might build with this item too, you're probably going to one-shot at that point. So you could do that and like even pair of your Q maybe. Like Tiamat Q. That's another thing too. You can also like double cast it as well as you're like going between places. R as well. A bit interesting, it's like a water effect. I don't imagine an assassin item being a water item, but pretty cool nevertheless. Yeah, I think in terms of comboing, I think this is probably going to be the best one. So WR, something like this. So WR, auto, Hydra Q. I think that's going to be the combo as of right now as well. That said, this is also the build path of the Hydra. It builds from Brutalizer, so I think earlier in the lane, it's a good first item. Maybe, possibly into squishy matchups. However, if you're kind of struggling with that, you could go Tiamat into Bork and then finish off with Profane Hydra. Or maybe go Ghostblade into this. There's going to have to be a lot of testing, so I'm going to have to test a lot of games on the PBE before I make this decision. But right now, that's kind of how I think when it comes to these kind of items. Maybe. But we'll get into that in the next video that I do based on this. The next item we're now going to talk about is Volcanic Cyclosword, I think. Volatic Cyclosword. I'm just gonna call it Cyclosword. It's a pretty cool name to call it, but what the hell is this name? It's a really interesting name, and it might be changed. Another thing to note too is that all these names might get changed, but the effects will probably be the same. Now, this item caught my eye for a reason. So as you can see here, we have this like energized icon, and the way this item works is that every 100 stacks, we're going to be able to do 100 bonus physical damage. Something that's interesting is that, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a build within this year, or maybe last year, where Turbo Chem Tank applied this slow around your champion. This would be increased faster with champions with dashes, so for a moment in time, Renekton and Akali was super strong with this item. And being that this works the same way in being able to easily proc it, I think Renekton is going to be a very good user of this. However, I don't know where you place it in the build, so that'll be to determined. But if I show you guys right now, it looks like this. So we do 100 damage, and it slows for 99% as well. So an interesting thing we can also do as well, if we just combo real quickly, is that we can auto, E, auto again, move around, E again. And it's back up now. So basically, in that whole time I'm like on top of someone, they're trying to run away, I proc 2 procs of this twice. That's 200 damage and 299% slows for a second as well. So very impactful when you're against people that are squishy and like teams where like, you know, they're trying to get away from you. It's probably a good counterpart to maybe Stridebreaker when you're playing full AD, possibly. So it is something to keep in mind that it can be good for that. The stats are also pretty nice. 15 haste, 18 lethality, 55 AD. Very strong item overall. Very strong for that reason. It also seems like the practice tool's about to end because I've spent an hour in this, so pretty interesting. But, but yeah, I have to test. I have to test this. So I tested moon speed factor. Let's see how it works. So dashes and stealth stack energize 75% faster. Something that's also interesting is that Renekton's E scales off moon speed, right? So if we build moon speed items, we're going to probably have a pretty interesting speed on our E. So let's just find out real quickly. It doesn't seem like much really changed. Okay, it changes a little bit. So if you guys are interested in this little thing, I guess there's that too. I just thought I'd test it out because I'm kind of testing everything, but yes. Your E is influenced by moon speed, so it also does make this damage output faster. So if you're playing with Ghost, you have Ghostblade, Dragons potentially. You're going to have more DPS and more ways to also proc this. But will it be a great item overall? That is yet to be determined, and I'll go over that within the next video. Alright, so I'm back. I had to kind of like redo the practice tool because it kind of timed me out, which I never really had before, so that's always very interesting. But there's so much to talk about with this whole like preseason and stuff. It's like kind of no brainer, I guess, that would happen. But anyways, to the next item now, we have Ghostblade. So Ghostblade is kind of on the weaker side, I would say, looking at it more, because it loses the cooldown reduction. I'm also going to skip this real quickly. So here we can see that it has normal cooldown reduction, 60 AD and 8 lethality. It genuinely works the same way. However, something that's different is not only the component that it has, Rectrix, it is also 2,700 gold too, which makes it a very cheap purchase for power spikes early on Renekton. So into matchups where you want to run down people and use that raw AD and like lethality, it remains a solid purchase once again for that. Especially for mid lane too, we can go Tiamat, Ghostblade. We can basically bring back the old playstyle of full AD Renekton mid and kind of just roam around the map, you know? So it's very good in that aspect, but the haste is definitely a problem for certain builds, like Bork, if you want to have that in it. So we're going to have to substitute that in some kind of way. Not really sure how we're going to do that right now, but that'll also come down to a lot more testing. But seems pretty interesting so far. Maybe I would go with this, Cleaver, Tiamat, and buy Rune King again, which basically is the old OG build. With all that said, that's pretty much Ghostblade. Nothing really changed with that. Next we also have Umbral Glaive, works kind of the same way, and sort of Serpent's Fang. Both on the cheaper side, they're more or less like situational items here, so nothing really too interesting with those. Edge of Night also works the same way. I think the stats got lowered by a small amount, but it kind of works the same way, which is pretty decent. And no, it is not an active. I wish it was an active, but it isn't. But yeah, there's not really much else to talk about when it comes to assassin items. However, there is one more, which is called Zoomies, which could not be any more of a worst name in my life that I've read when it comes to an item, but nevertheless, let's give it a little read. So, basically it gives us moon speed, another moon speed based item, and it seems like when we're out of combat for 8 seconds, we get up to bonus lethality. The way Ghostblade worked in Season 13 was that the change that it made into a mythic gave you additional lethality out of combat. So I think they kind of shifted it into this item and made it its own thing, which is okay, I kind of guess, but I don't know, it's more for like assassins like Zed, Talon maybe. I don't really see Renekton really using this the best, but I'm not so sure. But what lethality does it give us even? So it gives us 10 lethality by the looks of it. So 10 lethality, which is pretty decent, but it also makes items like Serylda's Grudge scale too. If you guys want to see like a little demo on like the lethality aspect of like how much it does, it's probably like this. So we get 110. That's another thing too. You get so much lethality now, it's crazy. So lethality builds can be on the map again, but I don't know like how good they actually are in a real game. Pretty crazy stuff overall if we view it from that way. Also, the more AD we have, the more damage our Hydra also does. And to compare it from Ravenous Hydra, if you just quickly check, Ravenous basically does more damage overall, but it depends like what stats do you want. Do you want lifesteal? Do you want like the haste? I mean, the haste is kind of the same. Okay, never mind. But do you want the lifesteal or do you want the lethality? I think a lot of people would rather go the lethality, but to be quite honest with you, I think Ravenous is probably better. Like, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it seems a bit weird. You're buying this to do less damage than Ravenous, but you get lethality, which scales with Serylda. But if you don't go Serylda, you can go Cleaver. Keep this, have the same damage, but have a bit more consistency with that. Yeah, overall, I mean, seems very interesting when it comes to, like, deciding between the items. Just thought I'd give that, like, a little test as well, like a little showcase. But yeah, that's practically it with assassin items. There's not much more else to say about them. I'm very excited to test them out. I'll need to play a game and, like, obviously show some builds before then. But yeah, very interesting regardless. Now, onto the tank items. So, like I said earlier, tank items haven't really been changed much. We've kind of went over all the main changes by now in this video. But I will just quickly go over if there's anything that catches my eye. So we have Form Mail, which looks pretty much the same. Iceborne Gauntlet has now been changed into a normal item. Gives 50 armor. It looks like they removed the damage reduction, so Cassante might finally be a little bit balanced, as well as other champions building this. So that's a pretty good relief. And Ephemus is the same. Trailblazer is a new item too. But we gain 20% bonus between. So it's like a support item. I think Riot was talking about wanting this. So it kind of works like Dead Man's Plate. It also only gives you one, so it's either Dead Man's Plate or the other. It's like more of a defensive buy, and this is more of like a team fighting buy too. So I guess in games where like you want to be like for your team, like play, like that way you can have this item, which is pretty good. Pretty interesting choice if you want to like play more supportive on top of that. Next we have Abysal Mask. Reduce nearby enemy chances by 9. I think it scales of health. Does it scale with health? Let's see. It does. So the more health we have, the more it like scales, and it's up to 25 by looks of it, so that's pretty interesting too. Takes a little bit to kind of come on, but I think it's okay overall. I think it would still remain a pretty good purchase too if you have like a lot of mages on your team and you want like damage against, you want to make your mages do more damage. And I think in this like climate of the game too, with things like Deathcap giving 140 AP, Zhonya's giving 120, Shadow Flame being insanely crazy and critical striking. Like, it's just absolutely nuts what AP items are giving you at the moment in this iteration of this patch. But yeah, I think Abyssal Mask will definitely be very good on top of these. In terms of other things, everything's relatively the same. Randiuns works practically the same. Critical Strike still 30% less damage to you as well, on top of an activation. So they've actually changed this again. So against crit champs, they've shifted the active back onto the passive now, which is actually humongous and really good to prevent like the whole damage creep of crit or like other things as well. So I think that's a very good thing as well. I think that's really, really good. Sunfire Cape, pretty much the same. Next we have this item too, Unending Despair. What is this? 400 health, 55 armor, 10 ability haste. Every 7 seconds while in combat with champions, deal 40 magic damage to nearby enemy champions, heal them for 250% of the damage dealt. I can't quite figure out how that's going to look like, but it seems like a very good item for like a drain tank build. Like, I picture, like, a Ravenous Hydra, Death Stance, maybe this item. Like, definitely very good when, like, you're going like, a Drain Tank build, you're against a lot of AD. Things like Rammus are going to be really hard to kill when you have this, healing all the damage dealt. Like, that's kind of who I see it on. And any comps where there's, like, a lot of attack damage, really good for Renekton as well, on top of that, with the armor. Force of Nature is still the same. Hollow Radiance is also a new item, so taking or damage, dealing damage causes you to begin dealing 10 magic damage per second to nearby champions for 3 seconds. Taking or damaging refreshes the duration of this effect. So is this, like, Turbo Chem Tank? What is this? Can I go Sunfire Cape too? Oh, I can only have one or the other. Oh, so I see. This is like a magic resist version of the Sunfire Cape. That's pretty interesting and different, and it also gives more variety for tanks too, like to pick one or the other as well. Nevertheless, it's going to be an annoying item to deal with. I kind of wonder why this is stronger than Sunfire Cape. Like, it is stronger, right? Seems like it. Kill enemy deals 41 magic damage around of them. And it also scales off health. So if we get like more health items again, what does this look like? 130 extra damage. So I think this is like actually like a better item. Almost. Like the fact that it has this additional like damage passive too, like on killing someone. It's a pretty big deal, but it'll only be against like AP users, so very decent item and very unique in that aspect too. Also, if we look at some of these build components too, just to like, because I'm kind of going over it all like at once. Things are like relatively the same. We have this very interesting and unique build path. We have a Bambi Cinder on there as well, with a... Sorry, I'm really tired as I'm going through this. I'm trying to make this while I can, really fast. So Spectre's Crowl. Spectre's Crowl finally has more options too. That's pretty cool. I think this is pretty much the same. Nothing too much different about this, but the build path looks a little bit more nicer than before, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Next, we also have Kaenic Rookern. After not taking magic every 12 zones, gain magic shield. So this is pretty interesting too, by the way. So you get this magic shield now. So if you're against like those heavy AP comps and you're like playing a tank champion, it's pretty good against them. So 20% of that is going to be a big deal. So that's a lot of damage to tank from enemy champions as well. And as you can see here, Hot Steel is still in the game. Basically works exactly the same way. Nothing really different at all. You gain permanent health for the game. You gain max stacks. And you also gain extra size too, up to 40%. Which is pretty cool and interesting. So, yeah. That is basically this item, which is also 80 magic resist. That is absolutely crazy. 80 magic resist for this item? Like, that is insane, by the way. But it's probably needed with how the game's going to turn out to be. In terms of other items, before I finish off this video, we have Warmogs, which has been changed a little bit. It seems to have more base health regen, and it has moon speed now, which is pretty cool as well for champions like Cho'Gath and other champions that want to build a Warmogs. Really good for them. And I think they also increase the Warmog's heart as well, so you gain more health. And you also gain moon speed now too if you haven't been hit by anything within 6 seconds, so that's pretty cool. And finally, you have Jak'sho as well, making a comeback. I think this is definitely going to be a Renekton item in terms of like tank items. I think our main Renekton items are going to be like Sunfire, potentially, maybe not. Maybe Jak'sho, maybe Unending Despair, Spirit Visage, Form Mail, Hollow Radiance. I think you can basically build a lot of these at the moment, but they're all going to be like pretty decent. But yeah, that kind of sums up the whole item surrounding Renekton. Like, I've talked about a lot in this video, and it might be a lot to kind of like understand, especially with how tired I am right now, but hope you guys got the point of the video. There will be a build guide coming after this if you guys want to see that too. This video is more or less like a introduction to that, so if you guys want the part 2, that'll be out on the following day after I upload this. So if you guys are excited for that, make sure to check it out. But this video is more or less explaining and breaking down all the items, and within the next video we're going to cover over all the item build paths, what could potentially be good, and what you guys can potentially be doing too within the start of the season, and having a better grasp too of what works well and what also doesn't work well. With all that said, thank you guys for watching this video. I stopped up late for this video, so I hope it kind of translates well as you are watching this. If you guys are excited, make sure to leave in the comments below what you're excited the most about. Do you like the new assassin items? Do you like the whole Tiamat being brought back? Do you like the whole bruiser items, the tank? Like, what do you like about this patch? That is my question. I am very excited to play. in a couple months when this is finally released. Basically, the most excited I've been for League in forever, so it makes me feel even motivated too in that aspect. And something I do want to just like kind of play real quickly, or like give you a little showcase on for a build, is that I think this is the comeback build. So something like this might be the full AD build back again. So if you guys don't remember, back in the day, we used to have Ghostblade, Ravenous, Bork, and Cleaver, and then some other item. Yeah, I think this might be it. Personally. Yeah, guys, if you're playing the PBE, make sure to also check out some builds. Tell me what your guys is your favorite build at the moment, and let me know in the comments what you'd like me to try to for a video. With all that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, and have a good one.